Hello my friends of the internet, my DIY friends. Hey, listen, I got a great video for you today. Today we're going to show you how to repair these. You ever had this happen with your wire shelves in your closet? These brackets fall off and the whole shelf comes right out of the wall and all your clothes with it. It's happened to me in the past. I know so many people that it's happened to, so I'm sure that you know people that it's happened to. And maybe you're here right now because it's happened to you. Well, in today's video, we're going to show you why this happens and how to repair it. It's very easy.
You want this alright? Want this alright? Too good to be true. You want this alright? Want this alright? Too good to be true. Gonna make you feel good. Gonna make you feel good. Gonna make you.
Okay, now I can tell you that every single closet project I've ever walked into in my entire life was never done right. To me, in my opinion, the closet installation people are the worst people in the world at their job. Every closet that every builder has ever given a human being has been the worst. These guys are I just can't put myself inside their brain and figure out why they do what they do. Now, I'm an engineer. This is not like rocket science. This doesn't take an engineering degree, but I guess apparently it does, because these guys just goof up so bad. So let me just tell you how these things normally work. You would have it go along the wall, these brackets go along the wall like right that. See, they screw these anchors in right here, and then the strut here, the brace will attach right there, and then the other end attaches onto the shelf up here, your wire shelf, with another bracket. The problem is almost 100% of the time, those anchors that they give you with the kit that you buy are garbage. The minute you ever see a plastic anchor, throw it in the trash. Don't ever use plastic anchors on drywall, ever. And a lot of times they get those stupid little blue ones where you pound it into the wall and then people think, well, that's going to be enough. They're stupid because the screw can pull straight out of that thing. And in many cases, if they're plastic, the weight will just drag that whole plastic anchor right back out of the wall. Here's the other problem. Instead of using an anchor in the wall, why don't we just screw right into the stud? Apparently these guys, these Einsteins that do these installations, don't carry one of these around. I use one of these stud finders. This thing's great. So here's what I do. I start on the wall, and I know there's usually a stud right at the corner of the wall. I go across the wall to find out where all my studs are. Oh, there's another one right there. I'll put a piece of tape that marks my stud. I'll move across. This closet's a little weird because I'll show you in a second here. And then here's another one here on the end. So I know that both of my ends, left and right, have a stud, and there's one in the middle here. So look where this guy puts his anchor. He puts it right here when all he had to do, a couple of inches over to the left, was put his bracket here and screw a screw right through there, and he would have gone right into the stud, and this thing never would have fallen off. You see that? Reliability. Okay, reliability boils down to just 3 inches. If this guy had just made the right decision, 3 inches to the left. And he would have saved the money on his little part there too. So that's why whenever I do this, I always do these through a stud. There's no reason to not find a stud and put one of these through the stud. Now let's say you're at a point where maybe you're in the middle of between two studs, like you want to put one here. Well, let me show you what we got to do with that. Okay, so there's 2 possible types of anchors that you could use here, and both of these are metal. So here's the first one here, and here's the second type, and at first glance they look similar, but they're really not the same. I really don't like these here. I don't recommend you using these for a high weight load environment like this, because just because you take this metal anchor and screw it into the drywall doesn't mean it's going to stay there. Part of the problem we have down here in Florida is drywall weakens over time. And over the years, it soaks up all that humidity that's down here, and it just weakens. And next thing you know, boom, everything comes ripping out of here. Plus, you get people that, you have a limited closet space here, right? And people start hanging all sorts of heavy clothes on here. The girls get these long dresses and jackets, and some of these clothing items can weigh 2 or 3 pounds each, and you start cramming more and more and more in there to the point that you can't even move your clothes around. That's going to add a lot of weight, and it's going to stress these things and crush the drywall that they're in, and boom, they pop right out. So these are only useful, you see how you got that screw head right there? These are only useful if you're going through the drywall and screwing into a wood stud. Outside of a stud, do not use this. This does not belong in the field portion of your wall in the open area where there's no protection. And even then, you don't need this on a stud, because if you have a screw, the screw goes right through right through the plate here. See, right through the plate, into the drywall, into the stud. Okay, and then in our case anyway, we have metal studs back here, so this wouldn't go through the metal stud anyway very easily. So this is not a viable anchor. This is the only type of anchor that I recommend that you use. And I'll show you how these work. These are really nice. So they just self-drill right into the drywall, and they'll go in flush, just like you see this plastic one here. What's different about these is once you start screwing in the screw here, watch what it does. It starts to, if you can get it right, see what it does? See how it pushed out that bracket sideways? And then as you start screwing into it, the more you screw into it, it starts to drag it towards the back of the drywall. So it then holds it snug against the drywall. So now you're not talking about having to rip through a little hole. You're talking about trying to rip through 1.5 inches of drywall, which is almost impossible to do. So these are good for 100 pounds each. This will handle 100 pounds of load here, okay? So that's why I like these the best. And as you're turning this with your drill, spinning it, you can feel this thing snug up against the back of the drywall, nice and tight. These aren't going anywhere. So we are going to have to use this type over here, because as you remember, when I pulled out my stud finder, there's no stud anywhere near this guy. However, the edge of our shelf is over here, and we have to have that brace underneath the edge of the shelf. So we are going to have this bracketing here, okay? So this will be better than anything than any builder has ever given you in the history of time. And these are not that much money. This is not the place for you to save a few dollars, okay? Because you're trying to save a few dollars, but you're going to end up killing a 3-year-old child who's in the closet here pulling down on these clothes, and the whole thing comes down on them, okay? So when you're talking safety like this, don't use this as your place to save a few dollars. This should be where you're spending more money. And also, if you look on the wall here, like right here, you can see there was a previous repair job done here too. So you have 2 places here that are living proof why these types of anchors haven't worked for these people. And you can see up on the upper one here, somebody got wise, and see over here, they added on either side, the left and the right side, they added these little cup brackets here, which probably do more to hold everything than a bracket would. I think I might still add a bracket in the middle. So here's another thing that helps cause these things to pop up on you. On this shelf here. So if you come way up in here and look in here, see this little loop here. So it's made to screw into the wall, and then it loops around the top of the wire there, right? And what you normally would do, they tried to do it here, but somebody looks like they undid it. You'd have an equal one on the opposites, on the bottom of it, that loops over the top, that keeps this whole wire rack from popping. See how it can pop up right now? Well, if they had implemented this properly, this should be around the top of that, keeping it from popping up. That way you can never have a swiveling action here. So if these ever pop up, that's what causes these things to rip out of the wall down below. So this is a pretty bad job. And just to let you know, I never, in new closets, do I install this type of shelving anyway. I can't stand this type of shelving. It's just so unreliable anyway. I typically use Closet Maid's other product. It's an upgrade. It's a little bit more expensive, but it's called Shelftrack. And I'll put a link down in the description to some of our other videos where you'd see me installing the Shelftrack, and it's a lot better because Shelftrack has a track along the top that goes all the way across the closet wall, and you screw it in many places through the studs, so it will never come off, ever. It's never even a question. The whole house will come down around it before it will come down. And then from the Shelftrack, we have these standards that come down, and it kind of looks like a retail store rack, you know, in the clothing stores. And the shelves sit on these brackets, and they're adjustable, so you can change the height, which is another great thing, because this shelf right here, you cannot change this height. You're stuck with that. It's fixed. And then if you look down below here too, you can see this is too close to the floor. So whoever set up this closet did not do a proper job. You're supposed to be at 40 inches on the lower one and 40 inches or 40 more inches higher on the upper one. So the upper shelf should always be at about 80 inches and the bottom shelf should always be at 40 inches off the floor. That's how you maximize how much clothes you can put. I doubt, maybe you can put some shirts here, but forget about anything bigger than a shirt ever hanging off this one, and then whether or not you can get shoes on the floor below the hanging clothes here. But anyway, that's why I like the Shelftrack system, because you can change the configuration of your shelves anytime you want, depending on how your wardrobe changes. So we'll have a link to that in the video and at the description there, and I will also put a link to the description in the description there. In the description, I will also put a link to this stud finder, because this is a great tool to have. Everybody should have this. This is just, I've been using this for years now, and this is the best type of stud finder out there. Just very quickly and easily identifies where your studs are located. Takes the guesswork out of it. So if these closet guys are too lazy to do this, how long did that take me to find that stud? 3 seconds, right? And yet, because he was too lazy to spend 3 seconds, they put their anchor over here. It was a useless anchor to begin with, and we know what happens after that. Let's go take a look in the master closet. Yeah. Okay, so here we are now in the master closet. I want to show you something with this too. So let's take a look over here. So if I put my stud finder right here on the wall there in the corner, we always know there's going to be a stud right there in the corner, right? Of course, there's nothing right there where they put that first bracket. And I realized they sort of have to have it there because if you look up here, it's close to the edge of this wire shelf here. So in this closet wire shelving installation here, they sort of have to have the bracket there. So it's not really their fault, but they should be using a better anchor into the drywall. So we can see there's where the next stud would be. It's like right in between those two. And then here comes the next bracket here on my left. And watch this. Look, see where that stud is? Just 3 or 4 inches over to the left. They could have, if they just mounted that thing 3 inches over to the left, he could have screwed right directly into that metal stud and he would have been fine. But the installer chose not to maximize the blessing that was given to them right there. And at least on the end over there in the back corner, they used one of the cup brackets, so that helped out. Well, let's take a look over here and see what they did on this side, if they gotten any better. So this one here, look at this. It looks like he's an inch. Let me take a quick look here. Yeah, so here, look at this. They missed the stud by not even an inch. Look at that. If he was just a ½ inch over from the right there, he would have hit the stud. These are the Einsteins that are responsible for your safety going forward after you buy your house, right? So here's the next stud here in the middle. Yeah, coming up over here, look at this. He missed that stud again by probably 3 inches. If he was simply a few more inches over, he would have hit that stud. Let's take a look at this next wall here. Of course, we know there's always going to be one right there on the edge. So they missed that one by a few inches. And beyond that, they don't need anything else because as we go over here, you'll see they have another one of these cup brackets there where it rests in there. So they're fine there. But you can see just how ignorant these guys must have been because they, in many cases, they missed the stud just by a couple of inches. So that couple of inches that they missed the studs by makes the difference between whether or not your closet shelving stays attached or not. That's why these guys would have been better off just doing like a Shelftrack system or something, because clearly with these systems, the installers have no idea what they're doing. And I realize they're not engineers. I'm an engineer. I got a degree in engineering, but like I said, it doesn't really take a degree in engineering to get this kind of thing right. It just takes being able to push a button on this. Okay, so these are the new support brackets that we're going to put up here now, because these shelves are somewhat sagging a little bit. But if we come in and take a closer look here, you notice how this is the crap that they give you. These are the nonsense anchors here. These anchors are terrible. Don't ever use these. I always throw them out. You're either using a screw going into a stud, or you're using one of these high-end easy anchors that I use here. So the way these work is you would drill a hole in the wall over here, and put these into the wall. And then once you start screwing in the screw there, you see this little bracket in the back there comes in and grabs the back side of the drywall. And then as you screw it in, it tightens it in and pulls it in nice and snug. So this will never come out of the wall. Even these are not acceptable. Don't even use these, because these could still pull out of the wall. There's nothing to hold them onto the back side of the drywall. Okay. Now in this case here, if we look over here, we've discovered here, as we talked about in the past, where to find the studs. And here, I got a blue tape here where the stud is, and I found it with my stud finder. This would be a perfect time, if you haven't already, to hit the subscribe button down below. And once you hit that subscribe button, you'll see that little gray bell. Click on that, and that will alert you to every time we put a new video, so that you'll never miss a video. And also, if you like our video here, you can click on the thumbs up button down below. That lets us know that you like us. And any questions you have, please enter them in the comments down below too. Here, so you can see that's where the stud is. But if you look at where the original builder, the contractor that put up these wire shelves, he put his bracket over here, which was foolish, because just 2 inches away is a stud. So we're going to be putting our mounting bracket right here and mounting it to where the stud is. We're going to be right here. And this turns out to be a perfect location, because the manufacturer here, Closet Maid, they want you to mount these Closet Maid bracket supports for their wire shelves right in the middle here. They want you to be 36 inches apart from the last possible support, which would be these end points here. So we can come right in smack dab in the middle and we'll be fine. So the original contractor was sort of okay in the position that he chose, but he missed his mark. So he stuck it in with this thing here. And of course the other brackets that were here, these are the older style ones. These were sitting in there and they just pulled right out of the anchor. It's amazing the anchor didn't come out of the wall. Okay, so let's go ahead and get these started. So we take our bracket here, and for the 12-inch, we want to stick it up around the top there. And see just how it just loops right over the top. And down at the bottom, we find a place where it'll be nice and snug up against the wall there. So it turns out somewhere right around here, and I want to make sure I'm in the middle of my stud. So right there is where I'm going to mark and drill. Probably not even going to drill a pilot hole. We'll see how easily we can get my self-tapping screws to go into the drywall. And there's a metal studs back in here. Make sure I'm nice and level here. Okay. There's my pilot hole. I'm going to take the screw that I'm going to use here. I'll set this back up in there. Alright, so it's on there nice and solid now. And so really the whole thing is it's looking for forces that are going down this way, and they'll transfer down this member to the wall there where it gets absorbed by this wider plate here. Okay, so I'm going to put my spirit level back on there and make sure we're level. And we are. Okay, so before we even start putting in these brackets and mount these brackets to our Closet Maid wire shelves, what we have to do is make sure that they're level first. So see how this is sagging down like this? So I use my spirit level. I just put it on top of a piece of wood, and we raise it up to the point that you see the little bubble go into the middle there. That's how I know I'm even and level. And so that is where we have to have this wire shelf at before we can attach this mounting bracket to the wall. Alright, so I've just made a mark there. That drill wasn't really needed for anything, just to make a mark. Because there's no stud, we need to have it right here because it needs to be about 3 inches from the end of the shelf. And we don't have a stud here, see? So there's no lines. The studs are way over in the corner here. So we do have to use one of my little easy anchors here, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and grab a new one here. And we've got one here. So we're going to just take this, and by the way, let me show you one little trick here before we start. All right, so here's an old trick that I always do. Whenever I know I'm going to be drilling on the wall here, I usually tape a paper bag right below it so it just captures all of the dust and everything. That way there's very little that I have to vacuum up. So we're going to take our little easy anchor here and we just start screwing it in. Just trying to get the hole. And then once you get the hole in, you bring it all the way up and just very lightly screw it into the wall like there. So now the anchor is in the wall. So now once we put the bracket in place and begin to screw our screw into this anchor here, it will pull that bracket out on the back side of it and bring it snug against the drywall, holding this thing in forever. These have a strength of about 100 pounds, so this isn't going anywhere.
Okay.
Okay, now when you're doing this, you have to sort of take it on faith. You have this long screw, and you're going to slowly spin it and start screwing it in there. And just after a while of doing this, you'll get a feel for it. You'll know when the bracket has turned in the back. So now it's going to sit there. The screw will sit here and spin for a while, and eventually you'll feel it start to snug up on the back as it's drawing the bracket to the back side of the drywall. I just go fairly slow. And right there, I can feel it, see? It tightened up against the back. So now we know this bracket is in securely and permanently. And remember to make it nice and tight and everything here so that you can make sure that it won't pop out of here. So now this thing is like rock solid. It's not going anywhere. And if we look back up here on our spirit level here, we can see it's right smack dab in the middle there. See? It's not going anywhere. So we've made this nice and level again where it was sagging before. And I think I'm going to go ahead and put another bracket somewhere here in the middle. Even though they say you only need them every 36 inches, I think it would be best, because of the way this thing was hanging here like this on one side, I think it would be best if we added another one to take up some of that load off the middle. Sometimes people get really crazy with their clothes and they put way too much stuff on there and it just weighs them down, and that's one of the reasons why stuff comes out rooting out of the wall. But these will never pop out of the wall. If you look over here at this anchor, if we can get a close-up look here at this anchor right here, you can see this is the original anchor that the builder put in here. And this anchor right here is actually made out of plastic. It's one of those plastic ones that you run a screw through. So apparently that's one step up from the ones that you just hammer in, the little cheap plastic pieces. But these aren't even really very good too, because these over time can just uproot right out of the wall. Okay, so with this first bracket done, I'm going to put the second one kind of right over here. And I'm making sure that my shelf is nice and level there before I do. And you can see I've got the hole marked right over there where I'm going to add my anchor here. There's no other studs anywhere near this part here. So we're just going to use another anchor and go right into the drywall with it. Okay. Alright, so I'm just going to put this right there. Line it up on the bottom there with the screw hole there. There we go. These are nice and perfect. And just remember too, when you're putting these in and when you're first setting them, make sure that this part of it right here is pushing up against the rod here. You don't want it to be loose where it could potentially pop down and pop off. I really don't like these systems because you have to have it so exact. See how it wants to pop up? I just think these things are useless. I've never been a fan of this type of the wire shelf, for closet shelves here. I realize this is cheaper, and I realize a lot of people can't afford to upgrade, but I can tell you, I never put in closets like this. All I'm doing here is just coming in to repair this particular one here. But normally when I put in a closet, folks, I put in Closet Maid's more upgraded system. It's called the Shelftrack. And here's a couple of seconds of it. You'll see it here on the video of how that works. And what's better about that is you don't keep dealing with this kind of nonsense and trying to rely on these little struts here to support everything. We hang a bracket across the top there, and it's secured in multiple places into studs. And then even some of the standards that are hanging down are anchored into the studs as well. And so that provides you a system that will never fall off the wall ever, no matter what. It will never sag. And the cool thing about those is because you have those hanging standards there, your shelves are adjustable now. You can move them up and down and change your configuration whenever you need to. But meanwhile, back at the ranch, here's what we're stuck with. So anyway, at least this was successful here. I got one bracket here and one bracket here, and this thing's rock solid. It's not going anywhere. You remember before we started this shelf, it was all sagging. And so anyways, if we step back and look at this, this is a 6 foot wide, reach-in closet. And so a kit from the Closet Maid Shelftrack system, that would cost maybe about $150 to do a closet like this. That's why I think you should highly consider that, because it's not like a huge amount of money. It's not like you're running out and spending thousands. When you buy the kit, that's even better. I still prefer to do everything custom myself. And it uses the same wire shelves that you see here. So the Closet Maid Shelftrack system uses the same Closet Maid wire shelves that you see here. You can get 12 inch or 16 inch, depending on how deep your closet is. Okay, and so you'd have a much more reliable closet without spending a whole lot of money. So the closet I just showed you was about $800 total, but that was a 7x4 walk-in that I did all sorts of fancy spacing and stuff with, and made all sorts of extra little shelves and things like that. And all of those, little parts and everything tend to add up. So that was about $800 just in parts alone. All right, so I wanted to call your attention to something an installer or somebody previous to us did wrong. So normally these wire shelves will sit in these little mounts right here that you anchor them into the drywall. And of course these are poorly anchored in. These can pop out in a heartbeat anyways. But the key to success here with this method, if you're going to do this, is yes, you set the wire shelf in this, but then you also want to have one of these that's going the opposite direction, and it's supposed to wrap over the top. So I don't know why somebody undid that one there. So let me show you one that was done properly here. And that's right here on the lower rack. So you can see how they have that one that wraps over the top, while the one on the end there, the wire shelf sits right in the little cup holder type thing there. So it gets hooked right in. And then by having this one here, it prevents your wire shelf from popping up on the back like that. So that's just one more stronghold to help keep your shelf from popping out of the wall. But keep in mind though, it can still go out this way, from back to front if there was enough rotational force. So let's not kid ourselves into thinking that this is 100% foolproof. All this does is make your chances better of survival. Okay, so let me show you a couple of things that were done incorrectly here in this. This is a foyer closet right here. And first of all, I always come into things like this and I see this and I go, what? What were you thinking? Why is that one upside down? It's not even mounted the way it's supposed to be, because it's supposed to be used like that. And this one's not even sitting down in it. So great, so now we have that nonsense to fix. And then on top of that, they use this old strut here, and I can't stand these old types here. With the plastic thing there. And what's really bad is, see right here how small that pad is, that landing pad there, when you're supposed to be using like this. So I like to think of kind of like the old Apollo mission, where the landing pad, when they land on the moon, poof. So it's just better to have a bigger piece like this, because something like that could tear right through the drywall. If your drywall gets moist or soft or anything, eventually the weight bearing down on this can force it right through the drywall, and the minute it pokes through, what do you think happens? All the rest of this drops a little bit, and now it sets that forward rotational motion into play, and everything just pops out of the wall from there, and all your stuff comes tumbling down. So, like I said, every single person I've ever met, including myself, 3 times in my lifetime growing up down here in Florida, we've seen wire shelves come uprooted out of the wall, because drywall is not a good substance to anchor to. Alright, so we patched up that hole there, the previous hole. So before we figure out where to do the bracket. I'm thinking we put it right here on the corner because we know there's going to be a stud there. See, there's lighting up right there in the corner. So we know there's a stud there. So we'll go ahead and do it there. That way we can just put the screw right into the metal stud and it will never come off. All right, so a minute later we've got this bracket in, and you can see that definitely took a lot of the sagging and shaking out of it. So this one is done.